2002, Congress investigated the panel and found that 97% of the people who sit on it have conflicts with the pharmaceutical industry. And in fact, the congressional investigation cited one case where 4 out of 5 members of the panel were working for Merck when they approved a vaccine for Merck. And one of the people on that panel who voted had a patent on that vaccine, which he then sold for $186 million.
RFK Jr. gave some explosive testimony before the U.S. Senate last week, and I actually found it quite enjoyable and informative. But of course, Bill Maher doesn't feel the same way because he's actually now calling for the firing of RFK Jr. from the head of the FDA. So we're going to see today, of course, is Bill Maher discussing this whole situation. Before we get to these clips, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
I do want to talk about RFK a little because that was one of the big stories this week. We saw a little bit of the tape there. It was quite an event yesterday. Were you there for that one on Capitol Hill?
No, we were just watching from afar. But I was at part of his confirmation hearing, and I thought that was one of the craziest hearings I'd ever see. I mean, this was probably, I'm not kidding, it was one of the most contentious of the year.
Even people who were supposedly on his side.
Typically it's just the party in the minority who's going after the person who's testifying. This was Republican and Democrats going after him.
The reason there's been a bit of a backlash against vaccines is because the government was forcing people to take vaccines.
Correct.
And that is something I'm against.
And also not putting any stock in natural immunity.
Yep.
Even if you had the disease, you still had to get the vaccine, and also giving it to 2-year-olds who had never got outrageous.
Yes.
So there was stuff to be done. I personally find this very disappointing because I am the person who was sympathetic to what he was trying to do. A lot of people like me who didn't think that the orthodox way of Western medicine was, not that we're against Western medicine or vaccines, I'm certainly not, but just like there's another way to look at it, and a lot of stuff they were doing wasn't the right way. There was much too much about pills and surgery and not enough about preventive care. I said, finally, we have a guy in there who cares about this stuff. But he's also just nutty. He's just too nutty. He just does not listen. I mean, he just is. And nothing ever, I call it pendulumism, nothing ever stops in the middle. Okay, this needed a house cleaning, the CDC, but to fire all 17 of the top people. Now you don't have that voice in there at all. You just have your voice. It's just, he's got to go. I mean, one of the first issues we ever did on my old show was called America Causes Cancer. That it's the toxicity, it's the environment. I said many times, I never had a Western doctor who ever said to me, when what was wrong, what do you eat? It just never came up. Yes, everything should be looked at. But, I mean, for Bobby Kennedy to say, as he did last month, by September, by September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic. Well, it's September. And, you know, I was going to do a joke. Yeah, we found out. It's the Cheetos. But showing you that you can't parody reality. It's not the Cheetos. It's the Tylenol. This is leaked. This is from we don't have his report yet, but this was in the Wall Street Journal, apparently, that pregnant women's use of Tylenol is potentially linked to autism. There have been a couple of studies about this. Is it true? I don't know. It's not a case, in my view, where you can say that's just crazy. It might be crazy. Tylenol is not, not some benign.
I just took one before we came on the show.
Seriously?
Can I say 2 things on that? One, I questioned him about the autism deadline. He actually pushed it back because this has been studied for decades, and obviously there are a lot of parents and medical professionals who want to know what that is, and it's not something you can just do in 3 months. But on the mRNA vaccines and Operation Warp Speed, it was truly built on mRNA vaccines. It was an amazing technology that everyone watched happen in real time, and the production that was accelerated by the Trump administration. Yeah. The CDC has canceled hundreds of millions of dollars in mRNA vaccine research that they were doing. And I say that's a report that he is going to put out a report that says that from the HHS. And obviously that's a very serious link to make that medical professionals that I have seen have not yet made. And so that is really the question here, is that if you're going to put out something saying that this is the cause of autism, people want to know that it's backed up by science.
Right. Sure. But we might not have that science because it's sometimes.
Then don't put out a report saying
I agree.
It is.
But also don't tell me that Tylenol is completely benign. Because people have died from too much Tylenol, too much acetaminophen. It's not a completely benign drug. Do any of us really think that putting kids on all these drugs when they're young doesn't have an effect? That isn't part of the problem with why there are school shootings and kids doing crazy things? Of course it is. I remember Ariana Huffington coming on our show the first year talking about Prozac. That was the issue that made her famous. Right. She was right then, it's right now. We put kids on drugs way too early, way too often, and then we wonder why they're using street drugs when they're 20, because they never knew what sobriety was. Yeah.
So Bill Maher seems to be making the same argument about RFK that he's actually made about Donald Trump in the past. He actually agrees with a whole bunch of the policies. He just doesn't like the way it's being implemented. It's too mean. It's too overbroad. It's too quick. But here's the thing. If those 17 people that RFK Jr. fired, in fact, did have conflicts of interest, if those 17 people were out there saying, hey, we have to go ahead and ignore natural immunity in order to push this vaccine, and we're going to go ahead and say this vaccine is okay for infants and toddlers, then yeah, it seems to me like he has good justification for getting rid of them. And I'm totally okay with that, because clearly something has to change when the heads of the vaccine board don't have the best interests of the American people at heart. But then Caitlin Collins turns around and says, oh, I have something that I think I can attack Donald Trump and RFK Jr. over. Remember when the federal government canceled millions of dollars in research into mRNA vaccines? And I say, good. Why is the government funding those programs? Right? Any company, institution, university, whatever, that actually gets research done on these products stands to make billions if they turn out to be effective. So why in the world would we fund that unless we're getting a little bit of a kickback? But then, of course, Caitlin Collins also comes out and says that, hey, all of these studies that we're talking about in terms of links to autism should be backed up by science. And what are the studies? Bill Maher actually just mentions the piece in the Wall Street Journal. But what the Wall Street Journal is actually mentioning is the study from Harvard. Now, remember, the left loves Harvard, right? Everything they do is great. And over here you see that using acetaminophen during pregnancy may increase children's autism and ADHD risks. Okay, so this is not necessarily definitive proof by any means, but it is a study that does exist. And there's actually several studies with this same conclusion. But of course, the point is this: science is not settled. People see the rise in autism in this country, and of course, we want to figure out what's going on. But according to the establishment, according to all the doctors out there, we can't study it because obviously there's no links to anything that we're currently putting into our bodies. All right, so it's just the status quo as usual, but I'd much rather have people like RFK Jr. out there uncovering these studies and, of course, putting together reports and allowing other people to do their own studies and reports. That's the type of information I want to see, because that would be actual science happening in this country, as opposed to people walking around covering their eyes and saying everything is perfectly fine in this nation. I'm just kind of sad, although not shocked, that Bill Maher is still in agreement with a lot of this stuff. He just is firmly planting himself against it. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description, where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.